Hey everybody, welcome to the Vigilant Citizen. My name is Josh. This is my first video on this, so we're going to see how this goes, because I'm not really accustomed to standing in my room and talking to nobody with the intent of recording myself and sharing it with anybody out there who's willing to listen. But the intent of these videos is to share sort of my story, and today what I'm going to do is talk about social media, my journey through social media, why I eventually decided to completely get off of it, and the intent is to share those things with you so that you have some things to think about, things that you can walk away from and chew on, and if it gives you a better sense of how to make the right decision for yourself, then I'll call this a success, because I think that's my main goal here is, can I share what I've learned with other people so that they can make the best decision for themselves. And if I've given you something to think about, then I'll call it a success. Before I get into it, though, the whiskey of the day, maybe not the day. I don't necessarily drink every day, and I don't necessarily switch whiskeys every day. I tend to pick one, stick with it until I finish the bottle. This is a Glenmorangie Highland single malt Scotch, aged 10 years to perfection. Well, we'll see. It is pretty damn good. I don't know what I would classify as perfection, but that is smooth. So, anyway, so Facebook came out when I was in my first semester of college, fall of 2004. And when it first came out, you know, there were some people who were joining it. There were some people who were just sort of opposed to the very idea of it because it's something that everybody else was doing. And I, being 19 or 20 at the time, was still decently swayed by the people around me, decently influenced by those around me. So I was actually a late adopter, in the sense that I didn't join Facebook until about 2006, and excuse me, I've got this nagging runner's cough. I've been running again, and it's plaguing me now. But I joined Facebook in 2006, and it was a whirlwind. I just added everybody I knew, and I didn't add people I didn't know. I figured that was beyond the scope or the spirit of what Facebook actually was supposed to be for. I only invited people I knew, but there was a lot of people because I was in classes with a lot of them, and I would just, if I had a conversation with them once, I would just add them, and that was that. As my Facebook career continued, other social media platforms opened up. Twitter, I remember sitting in, I think it was my capstone class, I think it was the second time I went through college for my business degree, and they were talking about Twitter there, so I had my laptop out, and I just signed up for an account real quick and tried it out, and thought it was a little weird, and didn't really see the point, and never really used it again. I've still got that account, and I think I have a total of like 10 tweets over the last 10 years, or 15 years, or whatever. But, so, in thinking about Facebook and adding so many people, I probably had 200 or 300 friends, right? And that's not uncommon these days. People have, thousands of friends. And, but I found that it was more and more just a platform for people to speak ideological views. Jordan Peterson talks about ideological possession, and I would have never known to describe it as such, but looking back now, I realize that that's exactly what it was. And I myself was starting to get possessed, right? Because Facebook is so easy to not have an actual conversation with somebody. First of all, you're not face-to-face, right? There's that anonymity of the internet. Even if you're not completely anonymous, even if your name is attached to it, you're still not sitting next to each other. You're not able to potentially get into a physical altercation if one of you says something really rude or condescending or nasty that deserves a punch to the face, right? And so immediately Facebook removes sort of the human interaction, the base level human interaction that we've had since the very beginning of time. And we as humans we're not designed to have communication without sort of that physical environment in which it's encapsulated, right? Now, I don't necessarily have science to back that up, but from my observations, it seems like this is a truth in the sense that the majority of conversations that I've seen, and not just ones that include me, so I can't just blame myself here, it's not just me here. The majority of conversations I've seen on the internet, and hey, you're on the internet right now, so you've probably been around, you've probably seen the internet, you see what conversations on the internet are like. It's very rare that you find conversations that are meaningful, impactful, in which two people are having a genuine exchange of ideas, maybe in the early days of the internet, back when it wasn't so popular, right? And people were taking it more seriously. Maybe that's the wrong word, but maybe they were burdening more responsibility with what they were saying back then, like the late 90s, right? I remember conversations on the internet in the late 90s were maybe not significantly different than they are today, but different enough to where it's noticeable. So I found that every time I had a conversation, it inevitably ended up being political on Facebook. And why is that? Why did everything have to do that? And why did everything have to spiral down into that arena? And one thing I realized is that it's because that's the only thing that's pervasive across states, right? When we're thinking about the United States of America, that's the only thing that's pervasive across, because it's the highest level, it's the highest order of organization that goes across all of the states. And even when you're thinking about foreign countries, that's what goes across too, unless you're on if you're in a Facebook group that only talks about Fortnite or some other video game, and that's all you talk about. But inevitably, somebody's going to compare somebody to Hitler. Somebody's going to call somebody else a Nazi, and then before you know it, you're discussing the nuance of the rise of the Third Reich and the fall of the Weimar Republic. So, and that's just because you wanted to sign up to play a video game, to talk about a video game. So it's everywhere on Facebook. Why did every single one have to devolve into that? I didn't realize it at the time, but now I do, and I was part of the problem. And so I started to realize that I would put my opinion out there, and it's on Facebook, so it's not a nuanced, complex thought process to put it out there. You spew out your idea, you spew out your view, you just say it, you get it out there, and then you're done. And then people go and comment on it, and they tell you how bad, how wrong you are. But they don't tell you why, because they're ideologically possessed as well. They just respond with the other talking points. And so it does become sort of a competition between talking points and ideology. And I'm not blaming anybody else for it. I'm just as guilty. It's the human condition. We have given up the ability to have deep, meaningful conversations so that we can have quick attacks at each other. And, there's a lot more nuance to it than that. I'm glossing over a lot of it, and there's a lot of psychology around it. There's a lot of cultural influences and things like that. But what really seems to be happening, and what I noticed more and more, is that I would start to let this affect my behavior outside of when I was on Facebook. I would start to monitor my behavior at work. I would start to monitor my behavior around people at the gas station or even at home. And I would wonder things like, oh man, did my parents see what I wrote on Facebook and that I got into a big argument with these people that they like too? And maybe I should be careful with what I say around them. And so I started policing myself, and I started to really care about what other people thought, which is okay. There's a level of caring about what other people think, especially people you know and trust. But here's the thing, is that Facebook was exposing me to all these ideas and thoughts of people who I didn't know that well, and who I didn't necessarily trust, right? Not saying they're bad people, but they're not in my inner circle of friends. Right? And suddenly I was being exposed to them, and every time I would see them in real life, I would compare them to what their position was that they had posted on Facebook. And now looking back, I realize that is corrupting all of my real world experiences with those people. When I see somebody at the coffee machine, at the coffee pot at work, I should just talk about the coffee or the weather or just ask how their weekend was without any concern about what else is going on through their head. But with Facebook and with other social media, I was plagued by the constant thought of, what are they thinking? What do they think about me and what I've posted? And how is that gonna change our interaction now? And that's not natural. There's nothing natural about that, right? It's almost like you're mind reading. Facebook allows you to read minds because people are just throwing it out there, just throwing all their thoughts out there without a concern, without a care in the world. They just toss it out there and you consume it. And it's just, it's the old saying that your parents used to tell you, garbage in, garbage out. A lot of people think a lot of dumb things, right? Myself included. And we should go through a period of time in which we think through that, and maybe we expose our closest friends to it, who we trust, so that they can help us vet it. And if we're just throwing out what we're thinking at all times, I mean, there's a lot going on up here with everybody, right? Our minds were not designed to just find the solution and just spew that out and go straight to it. We have to think through a lot of things. And a lot of it is talking about it out loud, which in some cases is what I'm doing right here. There are some things that I've said already that I actually didn't even really think through before about the damages that social media cause you, right, and your friends. And so you're thinking about it. You're hearing people's thoughts, rather, is what I mean to say. And how often does that really happen in real life? Is the human mind designed to do that? You don't go to the Home Depot to go buy some lumber and suddenly hear a bunch of different thoughts by a bunch of different people. Oh, I need this kind of screw. Oh, I need that kind of screw. Oh, I wonder if she'd let me screw her. Right? Things like that. I don't mean to get crude or crass, but those are the kind of things, those are kind of thoughts that go through people's heads, or I wonder why he's not talking to me. I wonder why he hasn't called me back. Boy, my rash is really flaring up again. Right? We're not supposed to hear any of that. Those are private thoughts. Why are we sharing them out on Facebook? Why are we telling everybody everything that we're thinking privately? What good does it do us and what good does it do to them? So I started to realize that. I also realized it was making me an angry person, right? Not only was it corrupting the relationships I had with people in real life, but it was corrupting them in such a way that made me angry with them on the internet and outside of the internet. And I can't say that it ever really influenced or caused problems with people in real life, but it very well could have. If I hadn't really shown restraint, or even if they hadn't shown restraint, it might have caused issues, right? I mean, I've lost friends, maybe acquaintances. I've defriended, whatever the term is, unfriended, dismount, unmount, whatever. And I've unfriended people on Facebook because of their political views, because I actually found them to be quite dangerous. The people themselves, based on what they were saying, contextually, I was able to gather that I felt they were very dangerous people. And so I guess that's a good thing, right? Maybe it helps you vet people and what their behavior really is, or what they're really thinking. And if you think, boy, that person might actually throw a punch at me one day because he's such an angry person, right? You might glean something like that, right? But you should also be able to glean that in real life, and you're probably more likely going to be able to, because you can observe body language and you can have a more nuanced conversation that goes around the same topic through multiple layers, right? Whereas Facebook, it's all shallow. Twitter is shallow. Right. I can't remember what the limit is on Twitter, but what did it used to be? 240 characters? I don't know. I don't even know. But there's a limit. What can you gain from that? It's just little shallow pieces of information that mean nothing, that just flitter by your face, and what good does it do you? I mean, it wasn't doing me any good. So it must have been 2015, 2016, I decided to suspend my Facebook account. And there was something that came up that made me want to reactivate it. One of my nieces was on it, and I felt that maybe I should just kind of observe and make sure that she wasn't getting into any trouble or anything like that. Well, I started plummeting down into that spiral again, and I started seeing things. And I got better at just unfriending people and not talking to them, or you could unfollow, I think, so you just don't see what they're saying. There's probably a lot of new features. I haven't been on since 2018, so there's probably a lot of new features that I'm not even aware of, and I don't even care, because here's why. I started to realize just how angry it made me, and how useless it was, and how corrupting of a force it was in my life, that I suspended it again. And then I observed my behavior and my temperament for a couple months after that, until I realized, you know what? I don't really miss this. I don't really miss hearing other people's thoughts. And the people who I do care about, who I do want to hear from, well, I have their email addresses. I have their phone numbers. And this can be an opportunity for me to actually reach out to them and say, hey, I heard you went on a trip, or tell me about your trip, and can you send me some photos and let's talk about them? Instead of me just seeing the highlights of their lives and seeing, oh, they went out to the beach today. That's nice, right? Now I can have a conversation with them. Are my conversations as often? No, not at all. They're not nearly as often. There are some people who I haven't even spoken to since I got off in 2018. But that's okay. That means that maybe we're not as close as I had thought that we were. And that there's nothing wrong with that, right? People come in and out of your life, and sometimes your paths cross, sometimes they don't. And they're not bad people. They don't think I'm a bad person. It's just not, we didn't click on the sort of level we need, or we're both full up on friends. What's that number? I can't remember. There's some sort of a number that states how many people a human can conceivably keep in their inner circle, and how many friends they can presumably have. What's the maximum number? And it's something like 100 or 150 or something like that. So, but that's not even very close friends, right? I'd say that I have maybe 10 close friends, and only one or two of those are incredibly close, deeply close, right? I talk to them all the time. Right? I make time for them. And that's one of the things too, is that now I can focus on the people who I care most about. And I'm not getting angry by a bunch of people whose opinions I just don't care about. And I'm not sharing my opinion to people who don't care about my opinion either. And I have, like I said, a lot fewer conversations, but they're a lot more meaningful, and they're a lot deeper. So, and there's also, there's a lot of literature out there on it too. There's this book, Digital Minimalism. You can check that out. It goes into some of the details about psychologically what it does to you. That like button is, you're just chasing chemicals in your brain, right? Which chemical is that? I'm blanking on it right now, and I'm gonna kick myself later, because I know that I know it, right? But now in the moment I can't recall it. But when you're on Facebook, it's as addicting as a drug, right? You want to get those likes. Look at all these people out there. Look at all these people. This is what they do. They try to get likes. They post something, and they're disappointed if they don't have enough likes. What kind of life is that? What are you gaining from that? You're getting attention. It's dopamine. There it is. Okay, now I can refrain from kicking myself later. But it's a dopamine hit. They're chasing dopamine. And are you building anything? Are you doing anything? Are you contributing to society in any sense of the word if you're just chasing a dopamine hit? Why not just shoot up? Why not just do meth, right? You're going to do the exact same. It's the same outcome, right? Okay, maybe there's additional physical side effects and physical consequences for doing those things too, right? But psychologically, it's damaging. That's damaging. You can go through withdrawal from getting off of Facebook. I think I felt it for maybe the first 2 days. It's that whole fear of missing out, right? So, I guess what I want to leave you with is this. Think about, what do you gain from Facebook? Maybe you gain a lot. Maybe you that's your only way of hearing from your old Uncle Fred, right? If your old Uncle Fred would actually use Facebook. But maybe it's a great way to stay in touch with relatives or people across the pond who you know and you've made friends with. That's fine. That's okay. Maybe the pros outweigh the cons. For me, it didn't. For me, it was a drain on my life, and I think, in my personal opinion, it's a drain on society. Look at what we're doing to each other. We have outrage mobs that are using Facebook as a way to surround the castle with torches and pitchforks so that we can attack the latest monster, the latest victim of our outrage, and it's not cool. It's not good. It's not good for us. It's a bunch of keyboard warriors who contribute nothing other than outrage, and that's not healthy for society. It's not healthy for me. I don't know if it's healthy for you. So maybe I have a little bit biased opinion here, but it's something for you to think about. It wasn't good for me. Maybe you can find a way to use it in a way that's effective and positive, and if so, I commend you for that, and I suggest you keep doing it. For those of you who are wondering why maybe you feel angry when you're on Facebook, maybe think about what I've said, and maybe it's time to take a break or get rid of it entirely. And not just Facebook, any other social media, anything that you feel like you're getting tied to in a sense that is dragging you down in a way that you don't need to be. So, all right, well, I'll leave it at that. I've spoken for way too long, but thanks for listening. We'll see about doing some more of these videos in the future. So, thanks.